requirements for the PMP are pretty specific. And I guess because of the Project Management Institutes, this is their big certification. You know, it was the big certification that they first started with, obviously branched out into other areas, but they have very specific requirements to make sure that people are taking the exam that have the experience leading and directing projects. So there's two different aspects to this. One, if you are a college graduate, and I mean bachelor's degree or above. They don't care if it's a doctorate. It's a bachelor's degree or above. You need to have a certain set amount of experiences. And the hardest part about this is ultimately, and this is the second piece, the 4-year degree, is that it's 3 years and 36 months. So with that being said, 3 years of experience in a bachelor's degree, you're able to fill out the application and sit the exam. You also have to have 35 contact hours or training hours in order to sit the exam. So they do PMI. Anytime I say they, I'm meaning PMI. They want you to take an exam prep class so that you can learn what's on the exam. It might not be applicable 100% to your day-to-day or your industries, but ultimately they want you to sit the actual class. And we're going to talk more about that. High school graduate, GED, international equivalent, that goes up to 5 years. So 3 years with a 4-year, 5 years with anything less than that. And that's okay. Look, not everybody goes to a 4-year college, that kind of thing. You might be like, oh, okay, I just got my associate's degree, but I've been working in project management for a long time. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when you do fill out the application, you will have to document more experience. We're going to talk about the application and that kind of thing. Now, if you're looking at this and you're like, no, you don't need to have a 4-year degree. And it might have started out like that a while back, but no, you haven't needed a 4-year degree in a very long time. So if you do, you just need more hours. If you don't, more hours of experience. No matter what, you have to take the 35 hours. Contact hours equal 1 hour of training. And so therefore, 35 hours of training. Nope, it doesn't matter if it's a Bachelor of Science. No, It could just have any 4-year degree. However that works out. You're commenting for a friend? That's okay. Comment away. So it's all good. Now, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, I only have 1 year of experience as an actual project manager. And look, here's the deal. You don't have to have the title of project manager. If you have been leading and directing projects on your own, you're in charge with a team, but you didn't have, maybe your IT manager, and you don't have that project management title, that's okay. That is totally fine as well. But if you are looking at this thinking, I don't have enough experience for the PMP, then I want you to look at the Certified Associate in Project Management. I know support's in here with me. They're going to chat in my email address probably closer to the end. I'll give that out to you. If you have any questions after the webinar, it doesn't matter if you've never talked to me before. I want you to feel free to reach out to me and ask any questions. We can talk about the cert, but there are options. You could take the CAPM, get the experience, and then roll up to the PMP. You do not. It does not matter as far as the degree is concerned. Now, if you're still hanging out, you're like, hey, yeah, I think I've got that experience and I'm still interested, or I'm collecting information for my organization, the contact hours that I'm talking about are considered pre-certification. In fact, after today, after this webinar, you already have one. Any kind of project management education counts for contact hours. Contact hours are pre-certification. So you need 35 in total. And we'll talk more about the course and what that is and all of that. But they're pre-certification. Post-certification, they're called professional development units. And if you have certs, you probably have to maintain them with something. Sometimes they're called CEUs or something like that. But PMI calls them professional development units. And we go through that. Is there a PDU code that I can put so I get the PDU for taking the class? Do you already have your PMP cert or your CAPM? If it's for a CAPM, there's no code. You just put in that you attended a webinar with me. Yeah, that's what I figured. You just put in that you attended a webinar with me and just the 6 steps to gain your PMP with Stormwind Studios, and they'll count it as the one PDU probably under process or ways of working, I would guess, would be the best. There are, I don't know if you've heard of authorized training partners, but those are groups like us that sort of partner with PMI so that we get the most up-to-date content. Anytime the Project Management Institute updates their training materials, we get the updates. Anytime they send out new practice exams, we get the new practice exams. So it's good to know that you have the most up-to-date information. Sometimes if you were to go out online and take a pre-recorded class that you do you, but at the same time, it could be from years ago and might not have the most up-to-date or cohesive up-to-date information on the current exam. So anytime things update, we get that information. Anything that I teach after the PMP class that you would take for the contact hours also counts for professional development units. As far as the experience, and I think, this is where the application becomes difficult. How many of you are currently working on your application? I know because I saw some of you that were in my last group are starting to process their application. The hardest part about documenting each one of your projects across the 3 years or 5 years, however long you're documenting, is that PMI does not allow you to document overlapping projects and count them both. For example, let's say you have project 1 and 2 in a 3-month stretch. How many projects are you working on right now? 5, 4, 25, 2? We're all working on multiple projects. But essentially what PMI is not going to allow is 2 projects in a 3-month period counting as 6 months. It's 3 months on a calendar. Can you count the longest one? I know, right? Yes, choose the longest term projects. If you have a 3-year project, count it, do it. It's going to make your application so much easier. But if you have smaller projects, what is your longest project in the last 8 years? What would you say is the longest in time frame? I realize, well, if you're like me, 5 years ago, I'm like, I can't remember what I was doing. So I tend to fill out applications going from today backwards. Oh, thank you, Colin. Yeah, they're the keeper of the PDU keys. Thank you, Colin. Yeah, 2-year project, and I would start with that one. And any of the smaller projects within that 2 years, I wouldn't worry about those, but where they don't actually overlap, you can count 2 partial projects. If you had a project that got canceled in the middle and it's not overlapping with something else, use it. Now, I also offer application reviews because it's one thing to get all the hours and months and all of that documented. The hardest part about the application is the actual description in the application. And one thing, I always tell my classes is, I don't need to tell you to be honest. You're going to be honest, right? This is your career. This is your certification. But be careful about fluffing any information in there, because 1 out of 4 applications will get randomly selected and a real person's going to reach out to make sure you did what you said you did. But with that being said, don't let it scare you. When you finish the class, the day you finish the class, you can submit your application. But we talk about it day 1, and I often say to people, start thinking about it. Start building it out in Word. Start, thinking about what projects you want to document and who could validate the information were you to get audited randomly. Yeah, where would you, get that information from? Who could validate that for you? If they've gone out of business, you haven't kept in touch with people, whatever the case may be, you want to try and avoid those projects. But your experience hours, if you will, can go back 8 years. So 3 years within 8 years, 5 years within 8 years, dependent upon your actual education. You can start your application and save and continue on www.pmi.org, which is the Project Management Institute's website. And we're going to talk about, creating logins. And again, I cover all this in class as well, just as a refresh. But you could start your application, save and continue it. Yeah, you build it like a resume. Exactly, Kelly. You build it like a resume. The only difference between a resume and your application is the explanations. Most of us on a resume, I don't know about you, but on your resume, is it more bullet points or narratives? Because I think a lot of us these days, if you are building a resume, you're going to use bullet points, right? Or something like a little intro and a bunch of bullet points about what you did. This application is a little bit different from a resume in that sense that PMI wants a narrative. Yeah. How about supervising multiple PMs on a large multi-year program? You can use a program. It used to be they were a little weird about that, but as long as it's well documented, it definitely counts. I mean, you're at the program management level. This is a project management certification. So I would just choose one of your longer term projects over the past, 3 years and use that information. Here's the thing. Both over last 20 years in construction. Got you. Yeah, here's the thing. I offer to review people's applications. And you can send them to me if you feel comfortable to do that and say, hey, does this look legit? And the reason why is because ultimately, PMI wants you to document 200 words, not characters, words minimum, describing each individual project that you document. And that can be tedious. That's, a narrative about I did this and I did that. And unfortunately, a lot of us focus on the actual deliverables. Here's what came out of the project. PMI wants to know how you got from the beginning to the end. Just one little sentence about the deliverable and what did you do in process, people, business environment to get it from the beginning to the end of the finish line. And the struggle can be real for people to do that. They'll send me their first description and say, hey, am I even on track here? And then I offer, feedback. Don't be offended if I kick it back and say, hey, try this, because I know what they're looking for. Yeah, I need a thesaurus to say the same thing in different, right, if you work on similar projects. And we did talk about that. But yeah, 200 to 500 words for each project. You got one project? Awesome. Super easy, right? Use all the real estate. If you have a bunch of smaller projects, that's okay too. Don't feel like you need to go the 200 word, down that route, but definitely clarify and describe the project and what you did to get there in a way that an actual real live reviewer would be able to read through and understand what you did. They don't care about the deliverables. They don't really care about the industry. We do, right? Because we live it. They don't care. They being PMI, they just want to know, hey, what did you do to get from A to B? Now, here's the thing. This exam, we're going to talk about Agile and all of that, but what types of projects? I saw construction come in. What kind of industry are you in? And are you practicing Agile, waterfall / predictive, hybrid, Wagile, or a combination of a bunch of them? Where are you in the process flow? Do I have any Agile? You're a hybrid. Do I have any Agile folks in here? And you do not need to be a software developer to understand Agile. Support manufacturing company through IT, using scaled Agile framework. Yep, Agile, predictive. Spelling doesn't count. I know what you mean. Predictive / waterfall, insurance hybrid, public health care. Right, so probably more in the predictive with a lot of compliance, IT waterfall. Yeah, you could, and it could be a mix. It could absolutely be a mix. You could have done over the past 3 to 5 years, 4 predictive projects, 2 Agile, and 1 hybrid. It does not matter to them. Education hybrid. The only time that really becomes a thing is because of the exam. And we're going to talk about what's on that exam. Try not to focus on deliverables. 1 in 4 applications per day are randomly selected for audit by PMI. And they're going to send DocuSigns to people to sign off that you actually did what you said you did in your application. And that's ultimately why I focus on, reviewing your application, and let's make sure that what we're documenting is the truth. Now, this is an expensive endeavor. The exam itself, PMI charges money to actually take the certification. Now, some of you, hopefully, your organization is going to pay for it, all right? But if not, just be aware of what things cost. I'm a firm believer in saving money in any way possible. So you could join the Project Management Institute for 1 year for the membership fee of $159. You can cancel at the end of the year. You don't need to maintain that. But membership does have its benefits. You can see the difference between the PMP certification exam fee for a member versus a non-member. So it roughly works out to be you're saving about $100 after the fact. Plus, membership has its benefits. It's not mandatory though. You do not have to. The only real have tos are the education, the 35 hours, contact hours of education, and filling out the application, having the experience, and submitting that application and getting it approved. You do not need to join PMI. I'm a member. I know lots of folks are. The reason why is there are some benefits to that. There's some downloads that you have access to, like the project management body of knowledge, things like that, that you'll be able to access as a member. Plus you get the discount. So it kind of is worth it, I think, for sure. But once you complete all 35 contact hours, you can then submit your application. It takes about 5 business days for PMI to approve it, and then you can pay them and schedule your exam through Pearson VUE. So it's a process, and you have to dedicate some time to it. I mean, it's a big exam. The PMP exam itself is 180 questions. That's a big exam. They're situationally based, 180 questions. 5 of those questions are what they call pre-test or seeded, S-E-E-D-E-D, seeded questions that they use to build out their test pool. Every single one of you, if you were to take the exam on the same time, same place, same center, you would all get different questions. That's how big the test pool is out there. And this is how PMI builds out those test pools, because there's hundreds of thousands of questions floating around out there. You will not know which 5 questions don't count towards your score. So you definitely want to answer all 180. Carolyn, I had a bootcamp training and another job and passed the exam several years ago, and then my PMP cert expired between jobs. Do I have to take the class again? It depends how long. No, you do not have to. Your contact hours never expire, right? So you took the training. The only thing that I would say was that training pre-2021. Because if so, the exam has changed exponentially, and whatever training that was pre-2021 will not cover what you need to know for the exam. So my recommendation, do you have to? No. Maybe want to? Yeah. It's a very different exam than it has been in the past. The exam's 4 hours, but you have 2 10-minute breaks within that time frame. Pre-2021, I figure I should relearn them. Yeah, because this exam's almost 50%, if not more, agile now, rather than the predictive 6th edition, 5th edition, PMBOK guide that it used to be. It's a very different exam. And with this particular exam, they offer 10-minute breaks, 2 10-minute breaks. But what we have to do is take 60 questions, submit those 60, meaning you cannot get back to them. Take your 10-minute break. Yes, you can get up and walk away and all of that. And then do the next 60, submit. Do the next 60, submit. On the front end, there is a tutorial. And on the back end, there's a survey. Both of those are non-mandatory. I use the tutorial to hyperventilate because I have exam anxiety. And I always fill out the survey because I teach all the classes. So when I take a PMI cert, I'm giving them my opinion. Do you have to take the training directly through PMI? No. I have seen many other online education companies advertising certification hours upon. Nope, you need 35 training hours. The only benefit of taking a class that's got the PMI official label on it is, one, it's live. So you have live and some mastery recordings, which we'll talk about a little bit more. And you have the most up-to-date content. Not everybody out there is offering the most up-to-date content. Is the scoring still correct one, wrong one, non-answer 0? Nope. No, you only get credit for those that you answer correctly. They don't take away credit for incorrect answers anymore. So you're only getting scored on what you get correct. So they don't cancel each other out, hopefully, if that makes sense. No answer is like a wrong. It doesn't count for anything. It doesn't take away and it doesn't add, obviously. So they only score on correct answers. And, this exam is it's multiple choice, multiple correct. drag and drop. There are some fill in the blanks, but you have answers to choose from. You're never going to have to type anything unless you fill out the survey. Ultimately, the fill in the blanks, they'll say the blank is the right document for XYZ, and then they'll give you answers to choose from. There are also, yeah, answer anyway. When in doubt, choose C. Yeah, because they're not going to take away points for getting it wrong, but you have like a 25% chance of getting it right. Trust your intuition, trust your gut. Nobody ever gets 100% on this exam, ever. Even the people that wrote the questions. So don't try and get to that point of perfection, but do your best to answer the question based on what you think the answer is. It is a very difficult exam. It's not impossible. My peeps are passing. They just are. And so that's the good news. Plus, I'm available from the very beginning all the way through whenever you need me. If multiple correct, then your odds really 25% on a guess. Are your odds really? No, but the bulk of the questions are choose one. So the majority of the questions are going to be 4 answers. There might be some multiple correct. Some might be fill in the blank with 4 answers. Some might be a visual picture, like a chart or a graph with 4 answers. But the bulk of this exam is multiple choice. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Colin. Yeah, as far as Rachel, do you have to take the training directly through PMI? No, for sure. You do not. There are plenty of reputable organizations out there. But at the same time, I want to make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date information. And, definitely there are some out there that aren't. And I've looked, I'm watching them, right? Not all of them out there cover everything. As far as the exam is concerned, very, very different. So on multiple correct, pick all, right? Yeah, they'll tell you choose 2, choose 3, that kind of thing. So you'll know how many. And you will get partial credit on the multiple correct. So let's say you get 2 out of 3 right. You'll get partial credit for those 2 and 0 for the one that you didn't answer correctly. So that's the good news. They're weighted a little bit differently. And there's super secret scoring algorithm that PMI's got going on in the background is a mystery, maybe even to them. But how they actually score on the exam is based on domains. If you took the exam in the past or you looked into this in the past, you probably remember the domains being initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Does that sound right? It's a whole new world out there, right? Planning and preparation for this exam. Yeah, if you do not pass the first time, what's the retake process? Your application doesn't expire. You have 3 opportunities to take the exam within that 1 year long application window. So when you submit your application, you can take the exam up to 3 times. You won't need to, but up to 3 times. You do have to pay again. You do have to pay again. And this is why I often say to people, look, you don't want to pay for this twice. You don't want to sit through this twice. So the due diligence on the front end is going to be what's important. Once you submit your application, you've got a year. Take the time. And we're going to talk about how much time does it actually take to study and some of the study guidelines or tips or tricks, things like that I give out in class, because this is a very different exam. There are 3 domains. 42% of the questions are based on people. Emotional intelligence, active listening, servant leadership, team building, reward recognition, motivation, coaching, psychology, right? 50% is based on process, or what PMI calls ways of working. The ways of working are, they're supposed to be split down the middle with predictive, and agile, but they're hybrid questions in there as well. So for the whole exam, you might get more heavy agile, because everybody gets different test pool. It's not adaptive too, by the way. When you sit down and those questions come in, they're not going to be like, oh, you're terrible at risk. Here's more risk questions. It's going to feel that way. But that's not the case. The hard part for me was the CE hours and getting recertification in a timely manner when I was between jobs. It definitely is an undertaking. It is a project all on its own. The one thing about me, though, and Stormwind Studios and all of that, let's say you can only take the live class the first 3 sessions and then things, got it busy or you have fires to put out or whatever, you can always jump into the next live class for those sessions. And some people do. I teach the class every single month. It has to be taught live per contract because it is PMI official. And ultimately, not everybody, we're busy, right? Not everybody can attend in the time frame that the class is scheduled. So you can jump in and out as needed. Maybe you want to go through it again. Jump into it again if you need to. Use me as a resource. You know, my job is to not only present the information that you need to know to take and pass the exam, but also to support you through the process, because it's a big deal. Trust me, I've been doing this a long time. And those of you that have worked with me in the past, you know, I got you. All right, so process. Then business environment. The business environment is like the business case and project selection and environment, like the workplace environment, and how do we close out a project or phase. So it's really 8% of the exam, but the exam is very focused on agile these days and hybrid. Very, very different. You know, PMI used to be 100% predictive. And why are they changing? Well, the industries are changing. And every 3 or 4 years ago, I guess once you're certified, you'll start to get these surveys, but they're called role delineation studies. And so PMI will send out these role delineation studies and ask what people are using. And the last edition of the project management body of knowledge, the 6th edition, was when we first started seeing Agile show up in a PMP environment. They were very divergent. You have predictive on one side, you've got the Agile Alliance on the other side, and PMI noticed that more and more people were using Agile best practices or going hybrid, and they thought, we got to get in front of this. And so now this exam has a lot more Agile than maybe you might expect. As far as the scoring or how PMI scores, you're not going to get a score. They're not going to say you got an 87%. Instead, what you'll get is you were above target in this domain or target in that domain or below target, and you won't be in whatever domain. So what you're really shooting for is target across the board in all 3 domains. So target's anywhere from 70 to 85% of the questions in that domain are answered correctly. Above target, awesome. All right, that's a high score, right? If you got above target and everything, you crushed it. But you don't need to be above target in everything. And let's say you're below target in business environment, it's 8%, you're above target in the other 2. You know, really what you're looking for is a 70 to 75% score is what you're looking for. And that's what we focus on for practice exams and all of that. As far as getting a score, what am I shooting for to know that I'm ready for this exam? Now, here's the deal. How many of you are familiar with the project management body of knowledge in any of its iterations? 1st through 7th. I know if you've taken a class before, you took a previous exam, it was probably the 5th or the 6th edition, probably the 6th edition project management body of knowledge. And it used to be, hey, that's my study guide. I got to take a class and then I can read the PMBOK guide and I got that. It's not like that. Oh yeah, if you're having trouble sleeping, perfect. Yeah, so if I get 100% on domain and process, but a 0 in environment, would I still pass? No, because even if you got above target, it's still only 50% of the exam, right? You still, the other 42%, yeah, you probably wouldn't. No, you want to focus on the big domains. Yeah, 5th edition, 4th through 6th. Yeah, I would say you got to be at target. Yeah, at target for each domain to really feel confident in passing the actual exam, for sure, for sure. Now, this PMBOK guide is not the study guide for this exam anymore. You can, if you join PMI, you can download that and you can download the Agile Practice Guide and you can use it as a reference point, but it's definitely not read the PMBOK and pass this exam. There is no way. No way. So how do we build that study plan? How do we get to that point where we're like, how much time do I need to study? 100 hours is the recommended amount of hours. Some people learn faster, some people take longer, but this would be 100 hours minus. Yeah, you can throw out your 3rd or 4th edition as useless. It's a paperweight at this point. Yep. 100 hours is, best practice. You're welcome. I know, you're welcome. Take and retake practice exams. Practice questions, which we definitely offer, and they're out there. Review the course content for sure. It sounds like a lot of hours, but really this process probably should take about 3 months. You want to be able to break down the study material into manageable, realistic goals. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? Cramming last minute is the worst decision you can make. You will fail the exam if you cram. If you cram for this exam, you will not pass. I can promise you that. Spread out your study sessions over weeks or months to build confidence. Take it when you feel like you're ready. And nobody ever feels 100% ready going into it because they don't know what questions they're going to get. And sometimes if you haven't studied for a super long time, you might not know exactly what your learning style is. Visual learners watching, the videos or watching YouTube videos or even reading books, that kind of thing, that's going to be better for visual learners, charts, graphs. Auditory learners, maybe podcasts or re-listening to the classes. And kinesthetic learners learn by doing. Oftentimes there needs to be some sort of physical activity during the process. I take and retake practice exams and figure out what I got wrong, why I got it wrong, and I focus on what I don't know because I learn by doing. And so it might be a combination of all three, but you'll start to figure out how to study, as you go. But taking and retaking practice exams is huge towards your success. And here's why. Because this exam is perfect world. It is not real world. Anybody who's taken a class with me before, would you agree that this content does not align necessarily with what you do in your day-to-day? That the best practices that are recommended, you might be thinking, yeah, but that doesn't apply, right? The reason why is because we're all in different industries. And there's no way to be all things to all people. So instead, PMI says these are the standardized best practices and processes for people, process, and business environment. 100% best advice I got was to answer the question the way PMI wants you to. Exactly. Not what you would do in your day-to-day work life. Yet had the answers. And this is a traditionally, notoriously vague exam. And I'm not doing this to scare you. I want you to be prepared. I don't want people to ever think, oh, I can take an exam prep class, roll out of there and pass the exam. You can't. You can't. So yeah, absolutely. You want to answer it from PMI's perspective. Because if we don't, then even if it doesn't align, it's 4 hours. Yeah. Answer all the questions as if in a perfect world like they are asked. Exactly, Dave. And that's what I say to people. When you're practicing those practice exams, choose the most perfectly perfect, I'm a perfect human being project manager answers. And you will get them right. And then you go back to your real world where you're like, no, that wouldn't work in my real world. That's why understanding the exam content out, I wish we were in a perfect world. You will be for 4 hours while you take the exam though. So there's that. Paying for the pleasure of perfection for 4 hours. But 50% are based on agile best practices. And the exam is not, as mentioned, based on the PMBOK guide. It is perfect world versus real world. So in class, I focus on those both. Here's the perfect world. Here's how you answer it from PMI's perspective. How can you actually utilize these best practices in the real world also? How can we take away? Even then, they throw weird, goofy PMI correct. It's true. It's all true. And so that's why, I've set up some things for campus in my classes and how I run my classes and so on. And I set things up in micro exams. So there's 20 questions. Because look, I would rather clean my garage than sit down and take a 180 question practice exam on a Saturday. I'm probably not alone in that. Right? So micro exams were something that I created myself when I was studying for my PMP exam. I would do 20 questions at a time. Then I would score myself. And then I'd figure out what I got wrong, why I got it wrong. And start in this particular exam, it's more of a mindset shift to servant leadership and fail faster, succeed sooner, more agile-esque best practices than maybe what you've seen in the past. And that can be difficult for people. So how do we choose the right resources? Obviously, there are numerous people out there in the world that do this. But how good are they? Right? That's the question. Do they fit your personality? Do they fit your learning style? Do you want to be able to engage with the instructor? Do you want to do it on your own time? You do you. All I want to do is give you the information and introduce you to some options. That's it. Authorized training partners have the most up-to-date information. Now, we are under some rules, right? And those rules are have to teach it live, have to go through the official content. But one of the things that I notice with the official content, and I'm not afraid to say this out loud, is that there are some assumptions about what people know. How many of you are not familiar with Agile at all? Like, I don't even know what Agile means. Other than I'm Agile on my skateboard. You know, if you don't know Agile, yeah, don't worry about it. I got you. And here's the thing, not Agile aware. People are like, oh no, I can never do it. Yes, you can. So there are some assumptions that PMI makes about what people know. And me, being me, I'm like, oh, no. We're going to cover that more in depth. So I do that. These are called mastery. We do the mastery live in class, the deeper dives. Let's go all the way through Scrum. Let's go all the way through Agile. Let's go all the way through Risk. Let's talk about these things and really put them into more perspective than the assumption of everybody knows this. And then I record those. I'm allowed to offer supplemental information. And that supplemental information is recorded for you to go back and review. As authorized training partners, we can offer PMI official exam content, practice questions, all of that. So the practice questions are where it's at. Once you get through the class, please take and retake practice exams, but the mastery sessions are there for you as well. Make sure any resources are from 2021 or forward, period. Otherwise, yeah, throw it away. It's a paperweight, right? Any PMBOK guides prior to 2021, this exam is based on an exam content outline. It is not based on the book. If you go out to PMI.org, go to the PMP certification page, you can scroll down to the bottom, download the exam content outline. I give them out in class. I give you tons of resources in class also for download so that you can review it. But just be careful. Be careful of going out there and going the kind of the less expensive way. I get it. I completely understand the economy and life is expensive. So I don't want you to choose a less expensive resource and get the wrong information because that would be bad. So don't buy any brain dumps. Most of them are illegal. People are stealing questions or screenshotting things. Don't support that behavior. Don't do that because it's not, one, it's not going to help, and two, it's illegal and it's unethical. Membership has its benefits though. PMBOK Guide is a good resource. The Agile Practice Guide is a good resource. If you join PMI, you can download them. You'll also get a glossary with class and the slides from PMI and all of that. All of those resources come with the class. But if you decide to join PMI, you can join a chapter. It's not mandatory. That's it. That's all I say about it. Hey, if you want to join, join. If you don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Practical exam strategies. And trust me when I say we talk about this so much in class. The number one reason people don't pass this exam the first time out of the gate is one, they don't practice. They don't do practice exams, or they take one and they're like, I got this. But the two biggies are not reading carefully. How many of you skim when you read? I'm guilty. These are all cautionary tales. I promise you. I didn't cram. I took practice exams, but not reading carefully. How many of you skim when you read? I literally look like I'm playing a video game on my Kindle. I read super fast, right? And so skimming the content in an exam, I mean, it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? So you got to practice, perfect practice. But reading carefully and slowing down, nobody's looking at how long it takes you to get through 20 questions. When you take a practice exam, nobody's looking over your shoulder going, geez, oh, that took an hour. Don't worry about time right now. I want you to focus on reading carefully, not adding anything to the question or removing anything from the question. Read all of the answers. One of my tricks is I read all the answers from the bottom up. I don't know why. It just psychologically forces me to get to the top. The other thing that I do is I add context to the vague questions to legitimize the answer that I've chosen. And my backstory is not PMI's backstory. I can promise you that. So if you like a conflict question, oh, well, this is going on, and I add this information to justify my answer. And you'll find yourself doing this, or you'll add in your day-to-day. Here's what I would do. Here's what PMI would do. So it's good to have, some people are very structured and they've got, flashcards and notes and charts and graphs, and like I have a post-it note problem. You do whatever it's going to take for you to feel successful and to feel like you've done your due diligence. Forgot, pass during test and answer is new experience. Yeah, exactly. Right. Use the micro practice exams. They're there to help you. You can take them as many times as you want, but once you get to that point where you start memorizing questions, it's time to move on. Well, there's a bunch of them, plus full-blown. You want to take a full-blown practice exam. People often say, should I start taking practice exams during class? Some people like to get a baseline. Others prefer to get all the information first. There is no wrong way. It's whatever your way is to get across your own goal line. That's, but obviously I'm here for you if you have any questions along the way. And speaking of which, we'll give you my email address. I want you to feel free to reach out to me all the way through the process, or even a year from now, you're like, hey, I think I'm ready. Okay, let's do this. How many of you have exam anxiety? Because I do. I hyperventilate through every single certification exam I've ever taken. It's a fear of failure. It is anxiety and like pressure that I put on myself. I'm getting anxiety right now just thinking about it always. And I know this is a very real thing. This is a big professional certification. Chances are people at work know you're taking it. You're like, oh, I can't go back to work now. I want you to just be aware that I'm aware of all of that, right? And I've been right where you are numerous times. Preparation is the key for me. If I can walk into that exam environment and say, you know what, I did everything I could possibly do, and if I still fail, it's not the end of the world. Don't be your own worst enemy during the test. Exactly, Dave. Challenge negative thoughts. I'm highly positive in class. I'm like, you got this. You will email me when you pass. There are, even people who play sports, athletes, artists, they picture themselves being successful, and it's not psychobabble. It's true. It definitely is one of those things where you got to say, look, I've done everything I could possibly do to be as successful as possible, and I can see it. I can see, there it is, the day that I'm walking out of there with my sheet of paper that says, hey, I'm a rock star. I passed my PMP. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. But preparation is the key, and we talk about best practices. We talk about, all of that in class, and exam tips and ways to get you through that. I could never remove the anxiety. I've had people call me on exam day like, I'm freaking out. Like, you got this. It's going to be okay. And then they pass and they're fine. But the struggle is real. I get it. So this particular, isn't Agile just an excuse for scope creep? No, there's a gatekeeper for Agile. There's actually less scope creep than there is in predictive. And we do discuss how that works and who's the gatekeeper and what role is what. But that is a very common thought. Trust me, I've heard that so many times. So this exam, is it easy to scroll back and forth through questions in the beginning that you're unsure of and skip, and ones later? Well, remember you have these 3 groups of 60. So you can mark questions for later review in the group of 60. Once you submit them and take the break, you can't get back to them. And they do that so people don't cheat, so that you can leave the room, because you can take this exam from home. And we go through the pros and challenges of taking it from home or at a center. But they do that so that if you're at home or at a center, you're not looking up answers to questions you've marked. So it's to keep people from cheating, really. But within that group of 60, yes, you can cycle back through it. You can mark them. You can go back to them and answer them. But once you submit them, they're gone. And once you submit at the end, you'll find out that you passed, right? See, assumptive close. But use those 10-minute breaks, especially if you have anxiety, that kind of thing. Just kind of, okay, I just need to walk away. I think I did good on that first 60. I'm going to crush the next 60. We got this, and jump into it. Read carefully and mark if needed. But yeah, you can skip them and go back to them, all of that. Yeah. You can. And like I said, there's a lot to talk about in 1 hour. Oftentimes in class, all of this takes 2 hours to go through. So I'm really streamlining because I know your time's valuable. And hopefully you've gotten some information from this. I'm highly interactive in class. I want to know what's going on. I want to know what questions you have. I want to answer them in real time. I want to make sure you get the information that you need. And, if interaction is important to you, definitely take a live class. Be sure the content is based on the most up-to-date information. Just curious, if taking tests and lose internet, can you come back where it was stopped? No. If you take it from home and you lose internet, you basically forfeited your first attempt at the exam. And we talk about center versus home, and I prefer centers for that reason. Oh, Rachel, thank you. You have many wonderful courses available. Which ones should I be taking to focus on preparing for the most current PMP cert? Or are there new live classes coming? No, we have the PMP exam prep. The next one starts Monday, and I teach them every single month. So that I would start there and then potentially supplement any additional information. Like I have an agile practice guide videos for the PM that's part of the PMP program. That's all on demand if you want to go through that. Everything I teach in some way, shape, or form is project management.